Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have had a wonderful week so far. Today, in everything you need to know, I have a jam-packed one for you. We will be looking at captaincy and the main three contenders alongside one very rogue option. We will be looking at Crystal Palace assets. We will be looking at whether you should sell Nicholas Jackson and Joao Pedro and the potential replacements. Should you be selling Trent Alexander-Arnold, as so many of you have asked? And not only that, we'll also be looking at chip strategy and the midfielders. A jam-packed one, like I said. And in other news, I have ordered a mic stand. It will be here in a week, and from then on, you will see it in the videos, and there should be no audio problems. And I'm very much looking forward to actually putting this down. In the meantime, if you have not subscribed, we are so close to 6,000 subscribers, and I would be very grateful if you could help us get over the line, especially if you are one of the regular viewers who has not subscribed yet. And if you are a new viewer, to cash in on some of the luck that people in the comment section have been having, consider hitting that subscribe button, and you too could find yourself in the top 100, like a few do in the comment section of the people who watch regularly. But without anything else needing to be said, apart from the fact that if you like the video, make sure to drop a like on it. Let's get into it. There are three primary captaincy candidates in this video, with the first being Alexander-Isak. The Swede appears to be the people's choice after reviewing some polls on X and just having a look at the general consensus. I think you can expect an effective ownership of around 140-ish%. However, whilst he appears to be the most popular option in the community by a decent margin, for me, out of the three primary captaincy candidates, he is my least favorite. Why? Well, you may be aware that I have a certain philosophy on how the game should be played, and it very much aligns with upside maximization. I do not think him as a forward does that, and it certainly doesn't fulfill my criteria in terms of upside maximization. There was one person we gave a pass to, and that was Erling Haaland, but I do not think Isak is Haaland in terms of the quality of asset when they were at their primes, so to say. Haaland had this sense of explosivity, this ceiling that I don't think Isak has, and I don't think he has the floor that Haaland has either, even with the form he's in, compared to an older version of Haaland with an older version of City. And as such, I think I'm starting behind the 8 ball. I take Bryan and Mbeumo here as an example, and comparing to someone similar at his price point, like Martin Odegaard. Bryan and Mbeumo just put up a 19-pointer, right? And we all know Bryan and Mbeumo has the capability of producing big hauls against especially the teams ranked lower in the table. We've seen that on a repeated basis, especially this season, right? So you are putting yourself in a position to win big by buying him, and you are putting yourself in a position, I would say, to win small by buying Martin Odegaard in this particular instance, because yes, okay, fine, he was meant to have some set pieces, and he's technically the Arsenal number 10, and he's had good numbers in past seasons, but this season, nothing really pointed towards that. And as such, going there, even with the sense of security, you're really actually missing out on the opportunity to win big. For me, especially when it comes to captaincy and in general player selection, I always want to put myself in a position to win big, because when you do, it offsets so many bad weeks and so many bad outcomes, right? If you can just get hit big once, just once, as many men have said in the past when it comes to business, and they've been very successful in that, Mark Cuban springs to mind, then all those bad outcomes almost don't matter. And that's what I like to do with captaincy, right? Have someone that can hold huge. I don't think Isak can do that because he's a forward, or he can't do it as well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the footballing aspect, and I do genuinely believe that the person I'm going for has a better fixture, even though I assume many would disagree, and technically plays a better team. I would say that Wolves against Forest, well, one, it was a very interesting game, right? I thought Wolves were actually quite good. There were some good individual performances. I thought they were maybe slightly naive. Nottingham Forest are clearly very happy at sitting deep, and they're very happy to hit you on transition and have less possession on you. Wolves kind of played into that game plan for them and didn't really have any form of a protection mechanism. For example, in build-up, they could have left one man slightly deeper more often. They could have been very strict with their build-up, especially when they were entering the opposition's half, but they didn't really do that too much, and as such, on transition, they got hurt, and not just once, right? And even when Forest went quick in a vertical sense, and they were quite direct, they hurt them in that sense, right? So I think, honestly, Wolves probably learn from that, and especially knowing how good of a side Newcastle are, how deadly they are on transition, they don't offer them the same luxury. That's my personal opinion. He's obviously new to the league, and I think that game will be, especially in the manner, the goals that they conceded, I think it will be a game which he certainly learns from, in my opinion. So I don't think it's going to be as easy for Newcastle to transition on them as it was for Nottingham Forest, which is arguably their best attacking weapon, right? With that being said, I expect Newcastle to win somewhat comfortably, and he's in red-hot form, like I said. But there's a couple of things that I think we need to consider as well. One, they definitely look better under their new manager. And what if they do go to St. James's Park, as opposed to playing the style they did against Forest, which I thought was quite imposing, it was quite aggressive. What if they do use a back three system, but go very compact? One thing Newcastle have had struggles with in the past, and assets, for example, like Anthony Gordon, traditionally haven't done so well against, even at home, are these deeper blocks. And one of the reasons that Newcastle, for example, weren't so good is because of their eights, right? Profiles they had in there. Now, obviously, they've got Bruno G in there. Having a creative certainly helps, but we haven't really seen them tested, I would say, against a really good deep block when they've got these dynamics going on. So I do think that Wolves potentially, and somewhat, in my opinion, they're somewhat likely to actually pose them with Newcastle's weakness. So if I combine that, and look, like I said, I expect Newcastle to win somewhat comfortably, right? I just don't think it's going to be a walkover, and I don't think this is like going to be a 4-0, which some are suggesting in terms of captaining Isak as a justification. I personally don't think it's going to be that. And as such, when you combine the fact that he's a forward, and I'm always looking to maximize upside, still my third favorite, even with Salah and Palmer, arguably, definitely playing better teams, but arguably having worse fixtures as well. We now move on to the top two. Similar to the last section, I am always going to look to maximize upside on this channel, on the assumption that it is rational. And I also expect Salah to have an effective ownership of around roughly 150, 140-ish%. I think the split between Salah and Isak's captaincy will actually end up being relatively close. And okay, fine. Maybe Salah comes down to 130 and Isak resides at like 150, right? But something around that, give or take. I personally think that is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to take that on, especially considering what I am about to say. The key to understanding this game is understanding what Nottingham Forest's approach will be, because you expect a routine approach from Liverpool, right? I would say within games that Arne Slot's shown a lot of tactical flexibility, but their overall approach hasn't really changed. Whereas with Forest, in these bigger games, I think I've seen two sides to them. One, the side that went to Anfield, where they basically play 4 centre midfielders. They even play centre midfielders in the wide areas of their 4-4-2 in the midfield, and really look to increase the dueling capacity in their midfield, increase the physicality, make their deep block somewhat impenetrable, and then bring on their wingers later in the game and transition on the opposition from there and look to win the game like that or hit them on the counter. So that's one thing. The second thing is you've looked at their games against Man United, against Manchester City when they went away, and especially against City, 2 wingers started. And they were definitely more willing, I think, to initially have that transitional threat and have it pretty much for the whole game. I think Forest, to be honest, will take a bit of a hybrid approach, but something closer to what we've seen in the second half of the season, right? Which I think is good for Liverpool, because I think having 4 centre midfielders almost in their midfield, especially in their deep block, would just a task for Liverpool, especially if Szoboszlai is not going to be back by then, because they don't really have someone in their midfield, especially I'm talking about their advanced midfield, to maybe deal with that level of physicality. Yes, Jones has got a very strong body, but I'm talking about not just strong body there, but also the pressing and what's required from that, and a few other things as well. Okay, so I think that's decent for Liverpool, albeit I can safely say that Forest will look to defend deep, and Liverpool have had their struggles against low blocks this season. So this is my first issue with captaining Mohamed Salah this week. All the compact deep blocks that Liverpool have come up against, or at least most of them, have caused Liverpool problems in some sense. I say Harvey Elliott off the bench there because I do think he could certainly be helpful in this case if Liverpool are having some problems deeper in the game. I think he'll just allow Salah to access almost some of those more inside channels, because he's very, very capable at pulling wide. We saw that under Jurgen Klopp. For example, the triangles that him and Trent and Salah used to form, Harvey Elliott often used to function in those wide areas. So I think if he comes on, that could be a good thing for Salah. But in general, they've struggled against these compact, deeper blocks. They don't, I would say, have the necessary 8 profiles to really disrupt them in a way they would like. I think having an 8 like Martin Odegaard, for example, would be more helpful, especially if he is to function in a certain role, would be more helpful, right? Especially considering the quality of Forest's block and deep block, at least, how well it's been coached and how well the players are performing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the seeding attached to the fixture as such. I don't think they'll be able to create too many clear-cut chances for Salah. You saw him certainly play a wider role against Manchester United. And whilst Forest, I doubt go 5 at the back? They could with Morato coming into the side. And regardless, though, I think one thing you saw in the return fixture at Anfield is Salah still found himself wide even against that 4-4-2, given how aggressive Alex Moreno was defending him. Okay, so that's that. The next thing I'd like to speak about is something that's quite difficult to quantify. Liverpool have had Man United at home, not played particularly well, and drawn. They've then gone away to Spurs and lost. So Bosley is injured at the moment. And there just seems to me, at least, be a little bit of a feeling of not the wheels are starting to come off, certainly not at all. They've been the best team in the Premier League this season, but just that they're not quite where they were, maybe a little bit early in the season. And I wouldn't say that, to be honest, no one said that this Liverpool side are absolutely perfect and they are like this unbelievable side. They're a very good side. They've been the best side in the country this season. But I think everyone was somewhat expectant of a downturn at least. And I think we could potentially be entering into that period. If not in the middle of it, and maybe to get out of it quickly. So with their form, I also don't think it's the best time to be betting on Liverpool when they go away to Forest. Whereas with Forest, everything kind of seems to be going rather smoothly, and it's the opposite direction. Now, you may not care about that type of stuff, but I certainly do. Thus, I thought I would pose it. And lastly, earlier in the season, for a while, we spoke about a regression for Salah. However, he just kept going and going and going and going. Now, he nearly blanked against Manchester United. And I would say the performance was arguably warranting of that, but obviously gets the penalty. Then he technically blanks against Spurs, albeit in the Carabao Cup. Because they change it every year. The name. Could we potentially be seeing a regression there? Yeah, maybe. I do think that, because I think it's very hard for him to sustain the level of output within this side for the entirety of the season. And so for all of those reasons, I think it is a decent, if not a very good opportunity to bet against a high effective ownership captain. When I discuss why I like Cole Palmer so much, or why I like him more this week, I think it will be easier to justify as well. There are positives. Of course there are positives. The most obvious one is he's probably the best player on the planet at the moment, right? And we have to appreciate that. Secondly, I think Forest's defense is good. And this is what I mean when I say if they are more aggressive. I think it's a very good deep block. When I've seen them defend in their mid block, even against Wolves, right, when they were slightly higher up the pitch, there was slightly more spaces between the lines. And there was 4 spaces between the lines given what Wolves were doing and where Forest was stationed as a block. I don't think they're as good. One thing I think they're brilliant at is leveraging their physicality. So, for example, Murillo is extremely aggressive, and he can be so because Milenkovic is so good at covering, but also Milenkovic is so strong. He's so good in the air. They've got Ola Aina, whose dueling capacity is magnificent. He's also so strong. Neco Williams has had a very good return to the side as well, not to mention their midfield, and they got a lot of legs as well, right? So I think they leverage their physicality a lot. But if they are to be a bit more aggressive, and if the game can become a bit more open, then I think Salah can certainly hurt them, because I don't think their mid block is anywhere close to being as good as it is in comparison to the deep block from a defensive standpoint. And that's what I mean when I say that if they are more aggressive, especially in their side selection and how they approach the game, and if they get a feel for the game and try to take it on a little bit more, I do think Salah can hurt them in that sense, just by having a little bit more space and just the opportunities that will come his way. And then the other thing is Liverpool are still the best team in the Premier League this season. And I don't think that just because they drew against Man United and Spurs, they're all of a sudden this horrible team. I'm still, of course, appreciating what they can do. But for all of the other reasons, I will very likely not be captaining Mohamed Salah. I am quite confident in saying that Cole Palmer will likely be the lowest effective ownership option out of the 3 candidates discussed. Thus, for me, and with the way I like to play, I very much like that, right? Yes, there's more downside attached to that, but the way I like to look at it and what I'll choose to focus on is the fact that there's more upside, right? Secondly, I think with the ceiling, I think with the fixture, there's certainly the ceiling there. And not only that, he's also a mid, right? So for all of those captaining Isak, I have that over them. And you may potentially as well if you choose to captain Cole Palmer. The first thing I think you must know is the formation change against Palace. And I was surprised at the lack of discourse about this, because I went and watched the game yesterday or the day before. I caught up on it, watched a good 65, 70 minutes of it. And it was very much a 4-3-3 and a somewhat standard 4-3-3, as opposed to a variation of 3-1-5-1. You can call it what you like. You can call it 3-4-3 with a diamond in the middle. You can call it 3-1-6. You can call it 3-5. You can call it 3-2-3. But in the end, it's all the same, and we're all talking about the same thing. But it was very much 4-3-3. He was occupying right centre midfield positions. He was playing a usual 4-3-3 style right centre mid role, and I think this is great for him for a variety of reasons. One, he has Gusto to actually support him now, and supports him in positions which are more advantageous for him. fine. He's very unlikely to get an underlap, but at least he'll have Gusto in close enough proximity to combine with him. He'll also have his overlaps. He'll have the winger then as well to help out as well. And I think he has Jackson in closer proximity, and it allows them to establish a better connection like they did earlier in the season, right? And we saw that, like Palmer and Jackson combined well in this game. And sure, they didn't get on the score sheet for that. You didn't see the goal and assist combination, but they easily could have. And if it was for a better final pass, if it was for a better final touch, if it was for a better finish, then we would have seen that on the score sheet, right? And one other thing is he should have had a big haul against Crystal Palace. It was close. Crystal Palace certainly should have scored more goals than us as well. But I think that that's something to note. So you could look at it as a 10-pointer and look, oh, he only scored 1 goal, but really should be more. So even in a Chelsea side that aren't functioning as well as maybe you would like, I thought our attacking dynamics were fine, if not decent, not good, against Crystal Palace. And on another day, we score quite a few. So that's something to note, right? In terms of the historical pattern, it's there. I've obviously spoken about how I think it could be a bit hope. Now, going on to this game, right? One big thing. Evanescent and Unisalao are both out. And losing your number 9 is a big deal from an attacking standpoint, naturally. But also, I think it's certainly going to disrupt the quality of their press. Not only will they not have someone who's used to leading the press be there, and it's not the simplest role to, I would say, to coach someone well or for them to get up to speeds with the same standards of pressing as Fernandes was doing, for example, especially in an Iraola system, where it's one of their biggest creators, if not their biggest, right? And also, you'll have to move Cliver out of one of those deeper roles, or Semenyo, and I don't think that's good for a variety of reasons, not just pressing, but also in terms of general trance creation as well. And as such, I think we will have more control of the game because we'll simply be facing a less imposing attack, a slightly less dangerous attack, in my opinion. If you remember last game week, one of the main reasons I selected Cole Palmer as the captain was because I thought that Crystal Palace would press Chelsea man-to-man high, and I think Bournemouth, I'm quite confident Bournemouth will do the same because they do that to pretty much anyone. And I think, again, we could see a same or similar phenomenon in terms that Palmer could receive the ball between the lines or even just outside of that second line, and then he could drive and he could really hurt teams in this sense, Bournemouth, from there. And he's done that to other teams in the past as well, right? That specific maneuver, if you want to call it. So I think in this sense, he could hurt them. I also think in general, we've spoken about how central players are really the ones against Bournemouth, given the way they press and their fullbacks can jump and their wingers jump as well. And the fact that sometimes it's like a pivot in midfield. I think for those reasons, we could certainly see Cole Palmer have not just a big haul, but a performance whereby he's accumulating a lot of opportunities to return. And so for all of those reasons, I like Palmer. I wouldn't say there's zero feeling aspect to this. I feel good about the fixture. I like the fact it's at home. I feel very safe captaining Palmer, given what he's showing on the pitch at the moment and the positions he's taking up. The fact he has penalties as well. And when you put all of those together, and the fact that Bournemouth away from home, I think they can see goals. I quite like the Cole Palmer captaincy, and I'll very, very, very likely be going here. That actually isn't the end of the captaincy topic, because the rogue shout is to captain Mateta away to Leicester. Now, I haven't been too impressed with Leicester defensively, and I certainly think goals against them. I think Palace have looked good going forward, and yeah, sure, they scored 1 against Chelsea, but it could have been 3. It really easily could have. It could have even been more than 3 as well. And the guys really getting the chances are Mateta, Eze, and to an extent, not so much against Chelsea, but in general, Sarr as well. So let's discuss Mateta first. And I honestly do think it's not a bad captaincy shout if you don't fancy Palmer, but I don't expect many to go there. I love this pick. I really, at a bare minimum, I really, 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 really like it. There is immediate upside. And that's one of the big things for me. I think the way I view this Leicester fixture, I cannot see Crystal Palace. I think it's very unlikely Crystal Palace score less than 2 goals. And with what they're showing at the moment, not just the performance level, but the type of performance, the actual performance, I think the output, especially the goals, will be very much focused around Mateta, Eze, and Sarr. And Mateta being the most likely. So giving him that fixture where I think they score 2 goals, I think there is a probability that's far higher than usual for the number 9 to score against Leicester in this particular scenario, or at least return. So I feel very safe going into it because I have so much conviction. And I'm almost buying an asset who I think starts ahead of everyone else because I think I'm so confident in him returning. That's having a higher floor, you could say. Secondly, or thirdly, the zone occupation, not so much a channel runner, really occupying those dangerous number 9 like zones, and as such, returns will stem, in my opinion. So, for example, Eze early in the season, occupying brilliant zones. Fine, he didn't return, but that's mainly because he was hitting the post and the bar, then the post again, and putting it just wide of the woodwork. It wasn't just quite good, right? But in another reality, he would be absolutely flying, at least at the start of the season. And then threat. The threat he's causing or posing, and I don't mean threat in the sense that expected threat as a stat to analyze footballers by. That's not really what I mean here. I just mean the fact that when he's on the pitch, with his movement, with the type of actions he's conducting, with the positions he's taking up, with how he's interacting with his teammates, with his nearly moments by what he's doing, there's a lot of threat there, and he's posing a lot of threat to the opposition, and I think he's threatening those bigger FPL returns. And as such, I really, really like him as an option. Moving on to the fixtures, I think, like I expressed, Leicester away is a great fixture for him with a really high floor, if not seating a really high floor. West Ham away will be interesting. It was much better before Lopetegui got the sack, but I still think that one, Leicester lack. The main thing is they lack legs in midfield, and I think to lack legs in midfield against Palace is a little bit of a worry. And I wouldn't be surprised if Palace scored a few there. And then Brentford at home, right? You know how Brentford are going to play, or you have an idea of how aggressive they're going to be. And he could certainly hurt them in that sense, right? And then the fixture run extends for a while. People are talking about he doesn't have a fixture in 29, or he's unlikely to have a fixture in 29 now. I agree, but 29 is a long way away. And I'm so confident in him returning that I think he'll easily pay off the potential hit that you'll have to take down the line. Who knows? Maybe you won't have to. Okay, so that's me talking up Mateta. Now, moving on to Eze versus Sarr. You would likely remember, maybe a few weeks ago, I was really talking up Sarr, and I said that for me, it wasn't particularly close, and I liked Ismail. If I had to pick one now, I would pick Eberechi Eze. One of the things I mentioned in that section was Eze's swagger. And one of the things you've probably seen me include more in my videos recently is my preference for including qualitative factors in my analysis. And whilst I didn't really speak about it previously, I am going to do so now. Footballers, like me and you, are just people, right? And if you had anything off with you at work, your performance potentially could dip. Now, I have no idea what was up with Eze. Maybe he was just getting unlucky, but maybe there was something going on in any sense, right? Lack of confidence, anything at all, right? And I personally thought that the swagger in his game, because he is someone who has a lot of swagger and style when he plays, was lacking. And I always thought, and I mentioned it, that when he got it back, I think the returns and the output would follow. And I would say in the last two games, specifically in the Chelsea game, not so much in the Southampton game, but specifically in the Chelsea game, I saw that. I saw almost the Eze evolved. And Glasner commented on this as well. He said this could be the turning point for Eze. He actually made a quote. The quote is something more specific relating to what I was talking about as well. I'll potentially find that and drop it in the comment section. But even he alluded to this as well. So I think that this could really be the turning point for Eze. But it's not just that. Against Chelsea, against Brighton, one thing I spoke to you about, and the reason for initially having Sarr ahead of him, was that Eze was dropping deeper in the left-hand side to receive in that half space, and Sarr was acting as the runner. We saw that against Southampton, and we also saw that against against Bournemouth, where, for example, from build-up, Eze would pull really deep, almost all the way to the left touchline, and you literally saw Sarr alongside Mateta. However, against Chelsea, especially in the second half, Sarr was the one dropping deeper, and Eze was the one coming forward, functioning alongside Mateta, and he looked a lot more threatening in terms of goal threat there. Now, did this happen for the whole game? No, they almost alternated in this responsibility. The fact it worked so well, and the fact they even did it against Chelsea as well of all sides, one of the better sides in the league, I think it shows that this function could potentially happen in pretty much all games, right? And it's not just going to be a singular dynamic. It'd be a dynamic where Eze and Sarr alternate in this manner, which is good for his output as well, right? Then, on top of those two things, I think we have to take into account routes to points he has within game because of his X factor, right? He can score from this angle, he can score from that angle, he can leverage his ball striking, he can find himself in this position or that position, and he's just got the general X factor to producing, similar to the likes of Cunha or Joao Pedro, like kind of just producing moments out of nothing, even when their sides are slightly struggling to get you a return. And he's got that, and he's showing that in the past. So for me, at the moment, even though there's so many positives associated with Sarr, he's cheaper, he's still functioning as the runner more so than receiver who's going to go and carry. I personally am leaning to Eze now for the quality of player, even though I really like Sarr as a player. That's what I would say. And again, the double up, actually, no, we should speak about the double up. I can't just pass it off to calling it upside. I really am very, very, very bullish on this Leicester fixture. And I think this is almost an immediate source of points with a high level of security attached to it. I really do think the floors for this fixture, for Eze, Sarr, Eze and Mateta in particular, or at least one of Eze and Sarr and then Mateta, are very high. So if you wanted to go for a double up, I honestly don't mind it, because I also think they could score quite a few goals, and because the output will quite focused around these three, you're almost opening yourself up to somewhat certain points, but also a lot of points in the same game. And I say look at him, Bryan Mbeumo, because he had a fantastic fixture and he capitalized on that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two of these guys do the same. And as such, going there now, regardless of what is to come down the line, I think could be a good solution for your team. Unless it really messes up your plan. And we'll talk about planning later in the chip strategy section. Unless it's diabolical for your plan, it just makes a lot of sense to me. And there's a lot of upside attached with some protection as well. Significant protection. Should you be selling Nicholas Jackson? Now, we were talking about threat generation at Selhurst Park in the form of the Crystal Palace boys, but we should also be talking about it from the standpoint of Nicholas Jackson, because he was better than, I would say, the mainstream made him out to be, at least from an FPL standpoint. Okay, yeah, he missed 2 chances, one of which I think he should be scoring, the one, but especially, I thought he did very well to manufacture the first one in the first place, and hitting it with the outside of the foot, especially at the specific angle it wasn't easy to fire that into the bottom corner. I have some sympathy for him there, for sure. And people can't just say that is an awful miss, because I don't think it is. I think it's very hard to justify it. Okay, so that's that, right? But it was his nearly moment. He made a lot of very good runs, which were nearly found. He was in and around good areas. He linked well. And in general, he just looked quite dangerous. He always looked like he was nearly going to score. You'll say that's not good enough for me. I need goals. And I appreciate that. But I think with the current landscape of the game, it might not be the most efficient usage of a transfer. And the other thing is, it could go very well keeping him. Not just well, but very well. Why? Well, Bournemouth at home is a wonderful stylistic fit for him. Wolves at home is just like okay. But he could still score in that game. City away, I really like for him. They're not playing well at the moment. One of the worst defenses in the league, in my opinion, in terms of the fact that, yeah, okay, fine, they conceded 1 against West Ham and none against Leicester. Should have conceded way more, right? And if they had got a little less lucky, I think they do. And especially a Chelsea side who have legs. I'm not so sure that they'll be able to keep us out, right? And as such, I personally don't think right now this is the best sell. If you have a lot of conviction in the replacements, by all means go there. And I don't think it's the worst sell either as well, right? But I just think for now, with the current landscape of the game, with the fixtures coming up, with the fact that he's playing better than people are suggesting, even from an FPL standpoint, it's really just a finishes lacking, and maybe confidence a little bit as well, which I imagine comes back if he gets a goal or two. I personally would say to keep him. And also, if Palmer is to function in the right centre mid role within this 4-3-3, I think that's what we almost saw at the start of the season earlier when he was playing this 3-2-3. The dynamic they would have is more similar to that than it was in like the 3-1-6 when Palmer was playing at the top of the diamond, for example, or a variation of 3. Okay, now looking at the replacement, should you wish to sell him, Mateta, easily justifiable. Fixtures, you could say form because he scored a goal, but I think apart from just scoring a goal, he's actually looked good as of late, and he's just a very good striker in general. He's cheaper, he plays for a good attack, has a lot of the fundamentals going for him. I think Mateta's easily justifiable. Chris Wood's just Chris Wood, right? Easily justifiable. I don't even think Liverpool at home is that bad of a fixture for him. Southampton at home after, which is wonderful, and he's just in red hot form as well, right? Joao Wissa, again, someone who's easily justifiable. Why? Because, sure, on the FDR, it may appear that he has bad fixtures, but the 3 quote-unquote bad ones are at home. They're all against, well, Spurs and City, at least, are, I would say, stylistically good fits for Joao Wissa. And Liverpool, I think you can get them out. You just need 1 return from your forward in that game to make you satisfied at least, right? So I think he's absolutely fine. And he's cheap. He opens up a lot of other things. He's only like 0.5 more expensive than Joao Pedro, who we all consider a wonderful facilitator. And Cody Gakpo. Now, I say he's ish when it comes to easily justifiable. I think if you're willing to accept the minutes risk, then it's fine. For me, I'm not really willing to do that yet. Because I just don't think I need to when other forward options exist. For example, Jackson, Mateta, Wood, Wissa will all have better expected minutes. But if you're keen to get on him because you really like what you're seeing, which is understandable, and you've got the double coming up, which is understandable. I think going there is fine. But to conclude, I personally wouldn't be selling Nicholas Jackson this week. It's not the worst sell in the world. For those looking for a little bit more in any sense, whether that be in FPL or life, this community could certainly provide you with that. You will have access to the exclusive WhatsApp community group, which includes in-depth football analysis regularly. It has FPL help from so many different brilliant managers, and you will gain a variety of viewpoints as well, not only on player selection, but general approaches to the game, which is very helpful. You will also be joining a network of positive and motivated people who certainly will amplify your enjoyment of the game. Or alternatively, if you decide to join the Diamond tier, you can be a part of our 1 hour weekly Zoom calls, which, for example, are happening on Monday for this particular game week, which you could be a part of should you join before then. And we go into stuff a little bit deeper, whether that be tactical talk, but also just looking at every single person's team in a one-on-one fashion and getting other views from other people in the call to certainly ensure that you are selecting the best players for the game week and formulating a plan down the line. If you are interested, drop me a line on X, drop me an email. Otherwise, if you're sure that you would like to be part of this community, you can buy it with the membership link below. If you have any questions, again, please do hit me up. And you know what? Try it for a month. And if you don't like it, by all means, cancel. I would say limited downside with infinite upside. We are coming up to the point of the season, if we are not there already, whereby having a chip strategy in some form, a rough one at least, is, in my opinion, very important. Prior to this video, I went and looked at my team and tried to plan it and plan my moves for a while at least, including my chip strategy. It was very challenging, especially not knowing when 24 or 25 was going to fall, what double game week 36 was going to look like. But what I realized is if I never had a look at this and I never planned in general, it is going to be so hard to make your team optimal for the remaining, say, 18 game weeks. Thus, I think if you haven't even had one look, I really would recommend it just to see what implications your transfers have now down the line. For example, one of the moves I was considering, which we'll discuss tomorrow in my team selection, had a huge implication on the rest of my season, literally the rest of my season, because it blocked me from getting this asset in double game week 24, which means that I would have to make different moves down the line, which means I would maybe even alter my chip strategy down the line, all the way up to double game week 36, right? Which is very, very far away. So I would really get to planning at least. And of course, I will be here to help, but you will have to have a look at your own team. So firstly, when it comes to chip strategy, I think things are, well, whether we get double game week 24 or 25, I think chip strategy is largely dependent on that, at least at its first hurdle. Because if it's 24, I think the double is worse for Salah and it's better for the assistant manager chip in a relative sense, just between the pair. But not saying that, for example, the triple captain is absolutely worse, relative sense. But if it's double game week 25, I think the triple captain's a lot better. And I'm not as interested in the manager chip. Why? Well, even in 24, I'm starting to not be as favorable towards my previous strategy of putting it on the Everton manager. One, given Dyche's departure. Two, given Leicester's improvement in attack and the fact that they look dangerous. And three, the fact that the table is starting to form itself in a way which is making it difficult to take advantage of that 5-team rule. The 2 games I was looking at, for example, in game week 25 and 26, after, or 25 and 26, West Ham versus Brentford and Newcastle versus Nottingham Forest, neither now would capitalize on that 5-team rule. So with the way the table's going, it's not really allowing me to attack that upside, which I would very much like to do. And then in 25, they have Palace away and Liverpool at home, which I think is not the best for the Everton manager. One, they won't score many goals, and two, to actually win one of those games will be pretty tough in the first place. And then, like I said, we have the problem down the line of the 5-team rule not being really present in fixtures I would like. Okay, so I'm actually considering now playing the triple captain chip, especially if it's double game in 25, Wolves at home, Everton away, just back Salah to do the business and almost get it out the way and then go on from there. Right, so that's my current plan, definitely playing it there. I'm really against playing free hit 29 at the moment, because if the blanks are to be Newcastle, Crystal Palace, and Fulham Spurs, well, I have no assets from Fulham, no assets from Spurs, no assets from Crystal Palace currently. And yes, sure, I have 3 Newcastle. I could always offload them. I could just use free transfers. We have depth in our squad as well. So it shouldn't be too hard to navigate that, which means I would then have to decide whether the wildcard would fall in game week 30 or 35. Now, you can see in my 2 strategies there that the assistant manager chip that I've used here will be in the period of 31 to 33 to capitalize on double game week 33. Now, the reason I've done that and not put the bench boost there, which I know is a popular strategy at the moment, is when I look at the doubles, they're all playing against each other. So if I buy a doubler, he's going to be playing against my other doubler. Whereas game week 36 will be a bigger double. So at least I can choose some players, for example, my bench boost options, that aren't playing against a specific player and then another specific player, right? He doesn't have two fixtures against few of my other players, but rather I can just choose to target one team and not have any doublers from them, right? So I think I open myself up to more upside with bench boost 36. It very much becomes a question of then, do I want to wildcard in 30, set my team up for that double 33 in a more efficient in a more efficient manner, or do I want to set up bench boost 36 in a more efficient manner? So I have all of those things to consider. Currently, which is probably no surprise to you, I'm favoring the more risky option because I do actually think I can get through 33 with some ease. Maybe I'll have to take a hit. I just think there's a lot of upside to bench boost 36 if you have to play the wildcard the week before, and then you can optimize 37 and 38 as well in an aggressive manner, which I like because there's always goals towards the back end of the season, especially the last week. That's where I'm currently at. This is a very rough plan, and certainly subject to change, but this is where I'm at the moment. Should you be selling Joao Pedro? Now, unlike Nicholas Jackson, I'm far more open to this as a sell, and I actually think this. He had an ankle injury earlier this season. Now he's had to have an MRI on his ankle, given it's been twisted. The fact that he had the injury early, the fact that he's actually gone for an MRI, shows that it's at least somewhat serious. So maybe he misses the game at the weekend, which you could argue is one of the better fixtures that he has, right? Brighton obviously had their struggles against the lower sides, and we'll discuss that. But he's arguably missing one of his best fixtures. The second thing is the opportunity cost of the forward spot is so high because you have Isak, you have Jackson, you have Mateta, you have Wood, you have Wissa. You could argue some others as well, Jimenez, Blanky. So for him to be out, and you don't know he's going to be out, right? Because the press conference is likely to be after the deadline, given the game falls on a Thursday. For me, is quite a big deal, especially when Rodgers doesn't have the best fixture, and you'll probably lose value, and you're also losing an opportunity. Leicester away, you can tell I like him. Now, he is a brilliant facilitator price-wise, and he's a brilliant player who has certainly returned well so far this season. But Brighton have not won since game week 12, and they've certainly had their struggles against the sides lower in the table, and then obviously the bigger teams are just quite good at football and will obviously always give a difficult game. And I think without a natural number 9, someone to bounce off, someone to stretch that last line, someone to make a pocket space for Joao Pedro, it's difficult for him to reach a level of output we would like for on a regular basis. And I think his ceiling and floor is slightly affected as such, or if not significantly affected. Mainly because the opportunity cost is so high, though. That's my main thing. I'm more willing to sell him now. I'm actually quite okay with it. And the fact that if he is injured, you're not going to know. I don't really want to take that risk unnecessarily. So, and who knows, maybe it's for like a few weeks. And at this point in the season, I think having him on the bench might be just a little thin to keep him there for 2-3 weeks. Albeit it helps when planning for 24 because you can keep a little bit of money there in him and then use the rest elsewhere. But for me, I think I'm leaning towards the sell at this point in a lot of spots. And then the other question people have been asking is, should you sell Trent Alexander-Arnold? And I think no. Ipswich at home, Bournemouth away, Wolves at home, and then Everton away. Either at the end of that or sandwiched in between Bournemouth and Wolves. If you've got him, that's a very good fixture, and especially considering it's cost a 3-game expand. So one of those is a double. Not everyone will be able to access him because he's still expensive and some will have to restructure, myself. And you picked him for a reason, right? Like he's still returning a lot of points compared to other defenders. It's just the price. But at the moment, there's not so many expensive options whereby you need him, I would say. Obviously, if you want like a Mateta and you really want to get the money out of Trent to upgrade Joao Pedro, okay, fine, understandable. But in most cases, where the fixture run is so good in that period, I personally would just be keeping. And who knows, very unlikely to keep a clean sheet. I would say Brentford away. Forest away, I don't have a good feeling about for Liverpool. But they always got an attack and return on the cards, albeit at a lower likelihood compared to on buy. I wouldn't be selling Trent. I think it's way too much of a luxurious move in most spots. If you have strong conviction, however, very strong conviction, then by all means, go ahead. Finally, a quick discussion on the midfielders. And because the FA Cup games are still to follow, I think I will include this as a section in solving your problems in slightly more depth. One thing I won't need to revisit is Martin Odegaard. And I didn't like him at the start. I really didn't like him. Still really don't like him now. I think this is a strong sell, similar to Joao Pedro. The opportunity cost is so high, not just because of the position in the team, but also the price. Low ceiling, undoubtedly low ceiling, considering that his best avenue to points is probably those shots from outside the box, and he's very much struggling to access them. He's also got a low floor for all of the obvious footballing reasons. And when these other good options exist, I would say sell him. We're going to talk about Man United and Bruno Fernandes. I would say you cannot throw caution to the wind here. Yes, he was absolutely brilliant against Liverpool. However, as I expressed, this United side, given their system and players, mainly the players, are tough to beat in those bigger games. They're designed to be like that, but they're not designed to be these low box players or to batter these teams who are lower down in the table and put 5-6 goals past them. And he could play in the pivot as well. You have to account for the expected minutes in the pivot, whereby his output certainly has reduced likelihood. For all of those reasons, I would say that if you're going to buy him, okay, fine, but just know what you're getting into. Know that it could potentially not go so well. There is that downside, given how Man United are playing at the moment, and given the positions he might take up, and the fact that one game doesn't just change everything. Or you can't say that one game has changed everything when you haven't seen him perform in a different dynamic. I still think he's a good option. There's still a lot of good things going for him. Penalties, set pieces, the fact that he's Bruno, the fact he's good at the bonus system, the fact that the minutes are so good and you could probably just keep him forever, and the fact that he will play in the front three at times, if not more often. But I'm just saying, don't just have an avoidance of the risk when considering it. And then Gordon and Mbeumo is just very simple. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Both very good options. If you want to go there, they're both yeses. And I think it's very difficult to argue against. That is all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen. I will likely see you on Sunday as opposed to Saturday for the team selection. And then Monday will definitely be solving your problems. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful few days and weekend. If you have not subscribed around here, consider doing so, especially if you are one of the regular viewers or if you're a new viewer and you have enjoyed the video. Make sure to drop a like on the video. 300 likes would be absolutely fantastic. 350 would be even better. And like I said, I shall see you very shortly. Goodbye.